glad to see you all. We have a very interesting program. And Father Sugar is going to send you home happy campers. We all please rise. We're going to salute our flag. I pledge allegiance. Okay. On your desk, you have a big card. It says Expo. Where it is? You don't want to give me the card. Okay. It's a great big card. It's an Expo being run by Nostalgia Magazine and We're Alliance. It's going to be great. It tells you everybody's going to be there. We're asking you to take some of those cards back and put them on the desk in your community so they'll know about it. And it tells you all the things that are going to go on. It's going to be a fun thing. They have pinball machines and Beatles and a whole bunch of other things. So hopefully you'll help us out and get it back to your community. At an Alliance board meeting, I'm from Trinidad. We're having, in March, we have an election for a board. I'm asking, the following seats are open. Let's see. Phyllis, who collects you out at the gate. Rory, who's up here. And Bob, that's me. And Norma puts out the food. And Arnie, who helps everybody with everything. So those are the seats that are open. Anybody who wants to run for the board can contact me after the meeting or call me at home or email me, and we'll arrange for you to have time to speak at the meeting where we will elect the officers. And so I'm available if anybody has any questions. I'll be glad to talk to you. And John, come on up. John, you're going to introduce the guest.
Morning, everybody. We have some guests today for the Alliance. Please hold your applause to the end. We have Maribel Renaso Coleman, judicial candidate. Dr. Kirk Chetta, candidate 21st District, U.S. Congress. Edward Soule, deputy sheriff. For Slotsburg's office. Maxine Chessman, candidate for circuit court judge. Lloyd Comitier, County Court Judge, Group 4. Terry Mitz, District Manager, Senator Abruzzo's office. Jessica Metzer, Senator Rader's office. Dana Ackerman White, County Commissioner Dave Kerner's office. Megan White, Commissioner Berger. Jenny Seja, District 21, Congress Lois Frankel's office. Michael McAuliffe, candidate for Circuit Court Judge. Ray Jimenez, Kings Point General Manager, Vista Property. Alexis Andres, Commissioner Relations Director, Florida Sugarcane League. Caroline Villanueva, Community Relations Director. Evelyn Belante, Palm Beach County Property Appraiser. Tom Keeler, Fire Chief, Palm Beach County. Firefighters Paramedic, Palm Beach County. Albert Barallo, Fire Rescue. Steve Kiffin, PBSO. Major Khaleesi.
Our friend.
And that's it. Give them all a big round of applause. Thank you.
As usual, we are going to call on the people who touch the subject. And we're going to start with Captain Eastman. Are you there, Captain?
I am. I'm here.
Okay. Come up and give us the good news. Or bad news.
Good morning. Actually, it is good news, so. I'm going to make it kind of brief, and then Major Khaleesi is going to speak to you about a couple little things real fast. I'm going to go over the stats. I know the big thing that we've been talking about recently has been the vehicle thefts. In November, we had 12 of them, then it spiked up to 16th of December. And we've been talking about locking the vehicles and preventing, because they've been leaving the vehicles, the keys in the vehicles. Well, either word's getting out of there or the combination of the word getting out there and us making some arrests. We did make some arrests based on the previous stolen vehicles. So this month we only had 4. And of those 4, one of them, I think I explained last time how sometimes the statistics aren't exactly the way they look. So one of them was a business owner who fired their employee and said, bring back my vehicle, that's the company vehicle, and they didn't bring it back. So it counts as a stolen vehicle. But 3 of them were stolen, and all 3 of them, the vehicle keys were in there. So we're making improvements. We're going the right direction, but we just need to keep being vigilant. And I don't want anybody to get lackadaisical because we were making the arrest. We need to keep it up, keep locking the vehicles. Because along the same lines, we had a handful of residential burglaries, not a lot of them, but a good number of them, more than half of them, were the garage was open and people were just walking in and taking some out of the garage. So we need to make sure that we're not becoming victims, and along with the sheriff's office help us. So outside of that, the total statistics for the month were down 34% on crime, so it's continuing to go down. And in addition, we've had a couple complaints about different areas in reference to traffic. So we've gotten out there and we've been making sure to go ahead and stop vehicles. We're not citing everybody. We're doing a lot of educating, giving them warnings. But this past month we had 204 traffic stops. So that's where we're at right now, and we're trying to keep everybody educated and keep everybody safe out there. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to the Major and let him speak about a couple topics.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. I just wanted to kind of run something by you. With the Sheriff's Office has in the process of building, which is called the Real-Time Crime Center. And this consists of multiple resources where the Sheriff's Office gets actual data from multiple sources, federal, state, local, and we decipher a lot of this intelligence and put it out into the street. For the officers to utilize, for safety issues, for terrorist issues, and numerous things, which is fantastic. We have a pilot program, which part of this program is piloted in the city of Lake Worth. It's called the LPR system, which is a license plate reader system. And what they have right now in Lake Worth is the license plate readers, along with multiple cameras. And there are additional cameras going up in April. And it's tied right into our center and to the deputy sheriffs and the sergeants in the field. They can view these cameras on their car, particularly in the high crime areas. And we solved a bunch of cases already where the vehicles are seen coming back and forth into these areas. The cameras are in covert, so people don't know where they are. And we've been able to solve some murders, some shootings, whatnot, just in that small little area of Lake Worth. And that's just basically a small part where we piloted the program. The license plate readers, what they do is it's a camera that takes a picture of all license plates going into, for instance, your development. That is looked at every 6 hours. The FCIC, which is Florida Criminal Information Center, and the National Criminal Information Center, NCIC, data is downloaded into this server. These license plates are all compared to this data. So if anything is in there for a stolen vehicle, for a homicide suspect, a robbery suspect, stolen vehicle, pedophile, anything at all that's inputted into this data, that camera will pick that data up. That camera will take a picture of that vehicle and the tag and send immediate notice to our system and notify deputy sheriff's that, for instance, in this particular development, camera such and such just picked up this car for a robbery suspect, and then we divert our people to that location. What's unique is last week, actually 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of going to Lake Charleston, up in Boynton, because they decided upon themselves to go ahead and put in 40 cameras and LPR systems throughout. They have like 7 entrances. It's not a gated community. So they have 7 entrances that would have access to the developments. What we did was we went there and we talked with the board, and I commended them for taking that action because it's phenomenal to see that happening. But the LPR systems that we have used and we decided to vet after 2 years is called Vigilant Solutions. The reason we kind of steered them towards this was because Vigilant Solutions has a commercial data section. So all apartment complexes, private eyes, tow truck companies, any kind of private entity that has these cameras, this database is loaded up. It's national. So police have access to that entire segment, which is huge. It actually outnumbers the law enforcement cameras. So many of the cases are made on commercial data cameras that we have. You know, we're picking up some of the suspect information right away, and it's going back to the deputies. After we went and had a brief synopsis or gave them of how it works, why it's beneficial, versus the one that they had where you just took a picture of the tag, and then if you had a robbery that occurred in that development, and you had a white four-door Malibu, you would have to go through the 7 cameras and try to find one that entered around that time or left shortly after this robbery occurred. But the notification on a Vigilant Solutions camera goes right into the system, and you'll know right then and there if there's a bad guy, so to speak, going into your development, and that's sent down to the deputies that are working those developments or permits or contracts. So since that meeting, we've had other homeowners come forward and want to do this. So the purpose of what I'm trying to say here is, if your homeowners association is interested in something like this, for Delray, please contact Captain Eastman, and we'll set up something for you, a meeting, and we'll explain it in further detail. I don't want to take up the time here. And I'm doing the same thing for Cobra next month. So if they're interested, they'll have to contact Captain Keene and Boynton. And remember one thing, they're not cheap, but they're fantastic products. So if you want something, you know, have us come here with Vigilant Solutions personnel to talk about it, do a demonstration. We're more than happy to do that, but please go through Captain Eastman. All right, thank you.
Contact info.
Major Calisi was our captain for many years, and we treasured him. He was always good to us, and we tried to be good for him. And so next month we're going to say goodbye to Major Calisi, because he's retiring. Good luck, Major. We wish you the best. It was a pleasure working with you. Take care. Okay. Chief Hood, come on. You see a lot of white uniforms back there. She's going to tell you all about it. She's done the review.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here today. Palm Beach County Fire Rescue has a lot of exciting things going on. And I just want to assure you that we're here in Battalion 4, still working diligently on the excellent customer service that you all are accustomed to. I want to encourage you all to come out on this Saturday, at Station 42, which is off of Hagen Ranch. From 9 to 12 is CPR Day. Each class is 30 minutes. It's simple instruction. And remember that this skill that you learn could save the life of a family member or a friend. So please come on out and take advantage of that. I would like to welcome our very own Chief Doug McGlynn. He now is our Deputy Chief of Operations here at Fire Rescue. We are so happy to have him in this position, and we really look forward to the positive advancements that our department will make underneath his leadership. Please welcome our very own Chief McGlynn.
Thank you, Chief. There's too many chiefs, not enough Indians, I think is what's going on here. Thank you, Chief Hughes. What's really exciting, there's a lot of change in fire rescue. You may have heard a few things here and there. But the exciting thing is that Fire Rescue has selected an interim Fire Rescue Administrator, Chief Mackey. I'd like to call up my boss, Chief Mackey, come on up. Let's give Chief Mackey a round of applause. Nearly 3 decades of dedicated service, came through all of the ranks, starting from a firefighter in the nozzle, lieutenant captain, district EMS captain, battalion chief, district chief, division chief, to deputy chief, and then to the fire rescue administrator that he is today. It's just an amazing accomplishment. A man who leads with his heart and really is mentoring a lot of us that are coming in behind the ranks. So Chief Mackey is going to be leaving us shortly, but before I pitch all that and take all his talking points away, I just wanted to say he made some selections, one of which is mine, and I'll be overseeing the operations division. Which includes all of these district chiefs that you see at the meeting. So Chief Hughes, and we have these district chiefs throughout the county. and it's our job to make sure that we're rallying the leadership all behind the common cause and the goal, underneath Chief Mackey's leadership. So we're going to continue to do the great things that we're doing. I can't thank you enough for the experiences I learned by just being your local community, coordinator here, and the help that we have with Tony and the Fire Rescue Administration, along with the community. That's exactly how we get it done. So just thank you for that. And Chief Mackey, real quick. Oh, President Bob.
I want to say something about Chief McGlynn. He's been there from the very beginning. He's been an excellent help to us, and we're glad he's promoted. We're kind of sorry to lose him, but maybe we're not losing him. We'll find that out. And so we ought to give Chief McGlynn a big round of applause for all the years he worked for us. Okay, now we're going to give you the Big Chief. Come on, Big Chief.
Thank you, thank you. You know, one of the things in leadership that's the key is to bring in the right people. Is to bring in the right people to the organization. And as you can see, and as you know, Doug McGlynn is a leader. And I think one of our goals for this next year is to be more involved in the communities. And you all have always helped and supported Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. And for that, I want to come down here and personally tell you thank you so much. And as you can see in our choices and where we're going, this is the right move. And it's all about you, and it's all about helping our community. So thank you so much for the support, and we're going to continue to work with you, and learn with you, and grow with you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, now, another important person. He's small, but he's a big power here. So let's come on, Mary Lou Berger, our commissioner. Come on, Mary Lou. Tell a little bit about Megan. She introduced, nobody knows who she is.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So, I made the big mistake of spending the night with my husband up in West Palm Beach. I left my house at 8 o'clock this morning, and I just came in the door. I'll tell you what, traffic can be really horrible. You know, it was all due to the accident on I-95. So that spilled over to Military Trail, Congress Avenue, the turnpikes, 441, and I made the mistake of taking jog because I thought for sure there wouldn't be a lot of people on jog. Wrong. So I'm tired. I'm not even awake yet. I do want to take a moment to introduce you to Megan, and I'm sure she's going to be absolutely thrilled, but a lot of you don't know her. She is on my staff. She's the one with the cheery voice and the two cutest kids you've ever seen. And Megan will also pass around the monthly message when she comes in. So Megan, thank you for everything you do. And Megan and Vivian and Janet and I are going out to lunch today. This is our holiday lunch because we haven't had time to have a holiday lunch. So we're going all the way back to December and having a holiday lunch today. When I was stuck in all the traffic this morning, I couldn't help but think about traffic. So I wanted to give you two suggestions. When I was actually three. When I was sitting in traffic that was not moving, do you know how many heads I saw like this? Yeah. And then the traffic would move a little bit and the person's still like this. I had somebody in front of me this morning that did that 4 times. And 4 times I honked the horn. And you get this. So please, be careful. I got to admire Emily Schlossberg for putting the texting while driving before the state. Because that is very dangerous. The other thing is I learned through this experience to stay in the middle lane, because if you stay in the outside lane, then you're stuck with anybody making a right turn who has to stop. If you get in the left lane, then that backs up because of all the people getting in the left turn lane to turn left at the next traffic signal. So I kind of stayed in the middle, but it still took an hour and 40 minutes. And then finally, some of you know the trick, but you might not all know the trick. If you're at one of our intersections and you're waiting, I know you've had this happen, you pull up to an intersection and you wait. and you wait, and you're like the only car, and you're waiting, and you're waiting. Maybe it's trying to get out of your community, maybe it's at one of the intersections around here. Look down on the street in front of you and see if there's black lines at the intersection. Those black lines are trip lines for the signal, so that if there's nobody there, the signal will change when you pull over top of those. But some of the signals are set that they won't change unless there's two cars. So if you're the only car that's sitting there, put it in reverse, back up, pretend you're the second car, and the light will change. So that's just a tip I learned long ago from a very smart man who happens to be in the back of the room, and that's my former boss, Commissioner Aronson. I don't know if you saw him, but I think through all the work he's done, we can give him a big hand. So thank you very much, and happy Valentine's Day. I love you all.
Thank you, Commissioner. We want to thank Gia Holmes for the elaborate breakfast they brought for us this morning. And they always respond when we need somebody to fill in on the breakfast. And so we thank GL very much. And now I'm going to introduce Dr. Lori Villica, who's going to give you the rest of the program. And it's exciting. We have a whole bunch of things. Come on, Dr. Villica.
Yes, isn't it an exciting morning? And we have lots of goodies on the table there too. Well, to mention just a few things, we had the most fantastic wellness screening expo last Friday. Wow, hundreds of people came. It becomes bigger every year. Delray Medical Center is a terrific partner with this in helping the community. And remember, this is going to be a terrific expo as well, the Nostalgic America Expo, along with us, partnering with us. About last month, there were two questions that were unanswered. Is Harriet F. here from Emerald Point, and also Elliot C. from Huntington Lakes, Huntington Point. Two people asked a question and there wasn't enough time to have it answered. Right now on our email, and everybody's on our email list who asked the question, it's now on that, and the answer to those two questions are being sent out today as we speak. So you'll get that. One was about a question regarding caregivers prosecuted, and the issue is that the licensing ordinance is very new and still in the implementation phase, and none of the caregivers that were prosecuted so far have had licenses issued through Palm Beach County at the time of the offense. That was the answer to that question, but it's on email as well today. And the other thing was Elliot C. from Huntington Point asked about funeral homes, licensing for these people that actually work on policies for taking care of people after they died, they prepaid funerals and all that. That was a question, and that's outside of the purview of the state attorney's office. They suggested to go on the state website, and the Alliance did extensive research on it, and there's about 5 pages. It's also on a link on our email today, and believe it, it comes from it's actually according to the Chief Financial Officer's website. That's where you would go to get all the information on all of the licenses that are for the Division of Funeral, Cemetery, and Consumer Services. So that link is also on the email today. So those are the 2 questions answered. About our newsletter that you get lots of information every month, remember there were recent applications and all sorts of things in the Agricultural Reserve. Actually, most everything has either evaporated, it's been withdrawn, or it's been put on hold. Lots of things, yes, lots of things. But we still follow it consistently. But one very disturbing thing just happened last week, and you know the Alliance is always on the cutting edge of everything in the Ag Reserve, and we preserve the Ag Reserve. We work to preserve it the best we can, to manage the growth, because there's going to be a little growth, but still going on, because there are still things that can happen legally there. But we try to preserve what we can, and the most important thing is to preserve the preserved parcels. And all of you did receive the survey on email this week, and I had many responses back, because there's been a suggestion to possibly actually open up preserved parcels to possible some industrial uses with landscaping and placing parking lots, tractors, trucks, storage of landscaping materials on preserved parcels. It's a possibility that they're working on, and it would also include a text amendment that would have to be the comprehensive plan. Our survey came back from our group here, about 97% of you say no, don't do that, which is something that we have to voice that. It's very, very important. So we're working on that. It's not the end. This is going to be going on for months now. In May, something's going to come back, and then after that, if anything happens, it's going to be July when things would go through the process to continue. So it's a long process, but we follow it constantly, including the expansion of Atlantic Avenue, which we're working on, and we're going to have the dates this week for the expansion of Lyons Road, exactly when that's going to happen as well. So we've been getting questions about that. You have cards at your desk for written questions for any of our speakers today. So if you have any questions during anything comes up, fill out a card, please, and then raise your hand and we'll pick it up from you to ask our speakers. We have two excellent speakers today. The creme de la creme, Ron Rice, PhD. Come up here, Ron Rice, director of our Palm Beach County Agricultural Extension. He has 12 extension agents and roughly 40 support and grant hired staff. He also provides leadership to the Mounts Botanical Garden, and he has so much experience. I've known him a very, very long time, worked with him a very long time. He used to be our agriculture extension agent as well. He was an agent, but now he actually runs the whole department, and he's going to tell us all about the EAA. And I'm going to let him talk about it, but when we talk about the agricultural reserve in acres, right? We talk about the EAA in like square miles, right? And we're going to hear all about that. Please help me welcome Ron Rice.
Thanks, Lori. All right, is this working for you? Right there? All right, very happy to be here. First of all, I'd like to confirm Commissioner Berger's comments about rough traffic and people driving and texting. That was my experience as well. And I thought that trick about being that solitary car at an intersection and the light never changing, that's a good trick to remember. Really, in my past, when I encounter that, I just kind of look around to see if there's someone of authority. If I don't see him, I just go through the red light. But that works too. That's in my personal car, not a county vehicle, so let's be clear about that. Yes, I am the director of the Palm Beach County Extension Department. Just very brief, my background. I arrived in the Glades in 1993 after graduate school at University of Florida and worked at the research station out in Belle Glade. And my early work for about 7 years was in that early day research on designing, testing, and evaluating best management practices that were designed to reduce nutrient levels in farm drainage. And that'll be apropos to some of the things I talk about today. Thereafter, I did a bit of research, mostly crop nutrition and soil testing research in horticultural crops. And then, like Lori said, in the past 10 years, I was the extension agent for sugarcane and rice out there. So I spent about 20 years out in the Glades. It's a place dear to my heart. I love everything about it and the people out there and the growers. Learned a lot from them, and they've been doing some great things. You'll see in the picture here that we have Lake Okeechobee at the top with the Everglades agricultural area just below it. When I started researching this topic about water management, historical perspective for the EAA, I quickly found out that there's really no way to encapsulate and understand water management and what's going on in the EAA unless you look at South Florida in general in terms of the kind of tortured history of water management projects that have occurred. I want to point out this, this quote, draining and development of the Everglades. It's a pattern of political and financial motivation and a lack of understanding of the geography and ecology of the Everglades plagued the history of drainage projects. And this quote comes from a source that is highly regarded in academic circles throughout the world, namely Wikipedia. But anyway, I stumbled on that yesterday and I thought, wow, you know, that kind of captures it. So I wanted to share that with you. Just an example of some of the old equipment that was used during the draining of the glades. Let's put this in perspective. Now I can't use my laser, I can, but I'm the only one that's going to be able to see it, so I'll just try to describe this. But you're familiar with the peninsula. There's Lake O in the middle. The reddish area underneath it is the Everglades Ag area, and then if you see the kind of the greenish blobs underneath the red area, those are water conservation areas as you move south, and then you continue down to the Everglades National Park. A little close-up of the Everglades Ag area, you'll see it's all the little rectangles are actually 40-acre blocks of crops. Just want to point out how things look back in 1850, let's say. There's Lake O. Now, at that time, Lake Okeechobee wasn't really a lake per se. It was really a depression in the landscape that collected water. And as it filled up with the rainy season, you know, the southern perimeter would just overflow naturally and then flow through the marshlands directly south. And gradually that water would make its way all the way south into what we call the Everglades National Park today and down into Florida Bay. Water moved very slowly, and this has been referred to, of course, as the River of Grass by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. This is the situation we have today. Sorry, it's a little fuzzy. I couldn't find a better photo of this, but you'll see that this whole landmass is now highly compartmentalized into separate regions where the water management is conducted specifically for those regions, including the EAA water conservation areas and other areas. So if we go back in time again, you'll see that really the watershed for the Everglades Ag area and the Everglades National Park really starts up in the Orlando-Kissimmee River Basin, and as water meandered its way through a very convoluted river system down to the depression called Lake Okeechobee nowadays, that would overflow and you'd have that River of Grass water flow south. And again, here shows the compartmentalization where you'll see water is released east through the St. Lucie Canal, west through the Caloosahatchee Canal to the Gulf of Mexico, and then water then goes down south, and then water is pulled out to service the eastern urban areas. Make a brief mention of Everglades soils. First of all, that is not an Everglades soil. Just want to point this out. It's actually, if you're driving the turnpike up to Orlando, this is the kind of soil that you're going to see out there in the flatwoods. Very sandy with a little accumulation of clay. The Everglades soils, and then of course in many parts of Florida, you can take that clay layer way down at the bottom and just include sand and you've got a Florida soil. But in the Everglades, including the EAA, we have a special soil. It's an organic soil. Technical term is histosol. A lot of us just like to say mucks or peats. These soils are very special and very different. They are not produced from the disintegration of rock over millions of years. They're produced from aquatic plant material that have decomposed or partially decomposed in wetland systems. 4,000 years maybe to form the soils that we have. They're highly, they have a lot of organic matter. Our sandy soils have maybe 2% max. Organic soils, of course, 80 to 90% organic matter. Now, there's technical terms for all the different kinds of organic soils, but you know, veterans and old timers still refer to the mucky soils around the rim of Lake Okeechobee as custard apple mucks, because in the old days, that's the basic predominant plant that grew there. And as you move in the interior, southward, you'll encounter the elderberry peaty mucks and sawgrass peats. And that's an example of an organic soil profile. I had to do this because I was the director of the soil testing lab out there for 10 years as well. All right, let's start with a little bit of history. We really start with Florida. We start when Ponce de Leon was exploring the Bahamas, left Cuba, and stumbled, I think, in the Cape Canaveral area, and claims La Florida for Spain. Presumably, this April landing coincides with the Easter time in Spain when they celebrate the Feast of Flowers, thus Florida. The Spanish were around for 300 years, didn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, and they left. And at that point in 1821, Florida was turned back over to the USA. And at that point, Florida remained highly unexplored in the interior, very sparsely populated by a few squatters, but then mostly Native American tribes. There's an example of what Florida looked like in those days, and you'll see even Lake Okeechobee is an awkward shape. It hadn't been surveyed. People just knew there was water there, so it was just drawn in. So Florida became a state in 1845, and 3 years later, Buckingham Smith makes the first official inspection of South Florida, and his basic conclusion was, hey, we can deepen just existing streams, and we can reclaim the Everglades for people. And he also points out, in doing this, people are going to need to feed themselves. Agriculture would result. In 1850, the federal government passes the Swamp and Overflowed Lands Act. Now, this is for the entire nation, but for Florida, the feds gave 20 million acres of land that they didn't want because it was all swamp, and they basically said, it's yours, do something with it. It included about 5 million acres of Everglades swamp, included Lake Okeechobee, which stands for Big Water, by the way, in Seminole. And again, at that time, the lake really had no defined perimeter, no defined particular outlet. It just filled up and then overflowed south to feed the Everglades region. In 1855, the Internal Improvement Fund of the state of Florida was created, and a board of trustees was put together, which includes the governor, and they're tasked to manage the land grant that came from that federal act of the Swamp and Overflowed Lands Act. Their basic mission: provide for and encourage a liberal system of internal improvements in this state. This was brand new. There was no real historical precedence for how to proceed. The liberal strategy ended up being pretty simple. Sell the land to railroads, take that revenue, and then use it to build canals, levees, and drain the land. And then hopefully populate the interior and claim Florida as a populated state. In this process, it was very, very beneficial to the railroads. They ended up acquiring huge tracts of land, large rights-of-way along tracks, and then alternate 36-mile square sections of land. I don't really quite understand why it was alternate, but nonetheless, those are huge land masses, 640 acres each. And, well, now that you've given the railroads this land, it has to be drained. And that met approval with the new state of Florida because that's what they wanted to accomplish in order to allow for pioneering settlers to occupy the interior. The idea seemed good, but history worked against them. The Civil War disrupted progress. Florida was using Confederate money, so once the Civil War was ended, the money was useless. And then the railroads defaulted on bonds and everything stalled, and the TIF, or the Internal Improvement Fund, went bankrupt. And this was an issue because if these lands weren't going to be managed and drained and reclaimed as per federal guidelines, Florida was going to lose the land back to the feds. A couple of years later, Hamilton Diston, already a very successful businessman from the north, came down to do a fishing trip, like so many people do when they come to Florida, and he saw an opportunity immediately. A lot of different deals were cut with the Florida legislature, but ultimately he ends up purchasing 4 million acres for just $1 million, which was a steal in those days. He becomes the largest landowner in Florida, or in the U.S. The TIF was about $1 million in debt, so this made them solvent again. And this really set the stage for the development of Florida for the rest of our history. It was very successful in terms of rail lines. That increased dramatically. And with that, 150,000 tourists visit Florida in 1884, which is just an astronomical number for those days, right? And he basically paved the way for the Henry Flagler era as well. Now, he had very ambitious plans for draining and reclaiming lands.
he wasn't quite as successful as he had planned. He did start with the Lake Okeechobee, Kissimmee, and Caloosahatchee River area. And one thing he did is he connected the chain of lakes in the upper Kissimmee with canals. The Kissimmee River floodplain was partially dredged and drained and partially straightened out in areas. And keep in mind that while he's doing all this, he's also got a side business with steamboats. So he's trying to make water navigation ways that would benefit that business as well. Very significant, he connects the Caloosahatchee River to Lake Okeechobee, and for the first time ever, there's a direct drainage route from Lake O to the Gulf of Mexico. Some of his drainage projects worked, and I found it interesting researching this, that in 1887, we were actually growing sugarcane and rice near the Orlando area. He had plans to go down the Miami Canal region, but encountered hard calcium carbonate bedrock, and the equipment at that time could not penetrate it. And so that entire area south of Lake Okeechobee, he couldn't do it. He also had plans to connect the St. Lucie River to Lake O, and he couldn't do that either. So in some ways, he considered his plans a failure, but again, all this activity, including with the rail lines, really changed the way Florida developed. The turn of the century, the Army Corps of Engineers makes their survey, but they quickly conclude that if we're going to proceed forward with some kind of comprehensive water management plan for South Florida, it ain't going to be the railroads, because they don't know what they're doing. They just have ad hoc projects here and there. Drainage was just being done willy-nilly, and it wasn't really working on a comprehensive way. In 1907, Governor Napoleon Bonaparte de Grauward, and by the way, there's a lot of governors throughout this timeline, but he's the only one I mentioned in person because I think his name is really cool. But he creates the Everglades Drainage District. This is very significant. Being a district, you can tax the counties and the people that are inside that district, and this paid for future drainage efforts. Very successful. In 3 years, landowners, at least the ones that were on the records, increased from 12 to 15,000 in just 3 years. So now we're starting to get population into the interior of the state. Here's an example of just some of the crazy contraptions that were used in these projects. Remarkable machinery, but they worked. And over time, they did drain the glades. Okay, now I can't really use my laser. I wanted to point out what the Everglades Drainage District actually is. So it just starts north of Lake Okeechobee, and then on the east side kind of skirts the future urban area, and then goes all the way down to Florida Bay. During less than 30 years, it's about 25 years or so, the Everglades Drainage District accomplishes 7 major drainage canals. Over 400 miles of rock is removed, dug down, and drainage canals were created. The first, well, not the first, these are not in chronological order, it's just the way it fits on the map, but includes the Miami Canal, the North New River Canal, which drains in Fort Lauderdale region, the Hillsborough Canal, which drains kind of near Boca, the St. Lucie Canal that connects Lake Okeechobee to the St. Lucie River, and thus now we have drainage from Lake O to the Atlantic. The West Palm Beach Canal that comes down at a diagonal from Lake O and then shoots straight east along Southern Boulevard. And then 2 canals internal to the future Everglades Ag area, the Cross Canal and Bowles Canal. Massive, massive hydraulic work here. Astounding. Despite all that, hurricanes completely disrupt the system. Lake Okeechobee, the levees overbreach during these 2 storms in 26 and 28. Several thousand people were killed in the famous hurricane of 1928 in the Glades. Florida asked for help from the federal government. And at that time now, the quote, dike around the lake is really nothing more than just stuff that people have put up there over the years. oh, it's leaking here a little bit, I think I'll throw in about, 20 wheelbarrows of dirt. And, over time, maybe there was a small earthen dike that was around the southern perimeter. But the feds came through with the Army Corps of Engineers and built the Hoover Dike, authorized in 1930, completed in 37. And over time, the dike was increased in size, but by 1937, we do have a very large dike, significantly enclosing Lake Okeechobee. And what I want to point out here as we go through this is what you're seeing is the increasing compartmentalization of water in different parts of South Florida. And that original passive natural flow of water north to south, termed the River of Grass, is being increasingly constrained by engineering projects mandated by both the federal government and the state government. Now we got past those hurricanes and we have our canals dug, and now we go to the opposite direction with recurrent droughts. And these are things that do happen in Florida. So from 31 to 45, drought was really supreme. Water supplies were compromised, saltwater intrusion threats were occurring in the lower East Coast. And then we turn around and have two back-to-back hurricanes in 1947 that really swamped South Florida. And again, Florida asked help from the federal government. Coincidentally, the Everglades National Park was created in 1947, so that's one of the major historical landmarks. Back to the feds, they create legislation. Central and Southern Florida Project is the largest civil works project ever launched in the United States. And what follows is 20 years of massive hydrology engineering works stretching from Orlando to the Florida Bay. Now locally and within Florida, the legislature, at the same year, the Everglades Ag Area was created. And so this was land that was specifically demarcated to be used for agriculture. Currently it's about 700,000 acres. I'll show you a little bit more on the EAA in a bit. Locally, in order to manage this federal project, the Central and Southern Florida Flood Control District was created in 1949, and this is really the predecessor to our current South Florida Water Management District. It's basically the same watershed. Now we're starting to talk about comprehensive plans to achieve flood control for South Florida. That was their main mission. The major work that was conducted in the early 60s was the creation of the water conservation areas. I mentioned those before. So those are those large green blocks that are underneath the EAA, roughly 1 million acres. Again, the area is becoming increasingly channelized and compartmentalized with respect to water. At this point in time now, we have a dike along the southern perimeter of Lake Okeechobee. That beige region called the Everglades Ag Area, all of that is diked in, okay, so it's separated from the water conservation areas with dikes. Water doesn't move unless it's pumped. And then along the outer eastern perimeter of those WCA1, WCA2A, kind of to the right, all of that is diked off to prevent surface flow into the eastern urban areas. So you can see water's getting compartmentalized more and more and more. And these water conservation areas have a lot of multiple uses, I should say. Water storage for ag as well as urban, recharging shallow aquifers, providing the water flow to the Everglades National Park, prevent saltwater intrusion. And here we're starting to talk about environmental preservation, wildlife protection, and focus on water quality. Really, if you go back, and I stumbled across this reading, back in the 1940s, you're seeing comments from locals down in the Glades that are saying, this water management stuff up in the Kissimmee is really affecting what's happening down here in our ecosystem. So now it's starting to really be focused on by these large projects. Just a reminder again, there's our natural flow in the old days before compartmentalization, and here's the compartmentalized of water. And we're in a situation now where water doesn't move unless someone turns a pump on, okay? Very little flow, natural flow anymore. All right, let's jump to the Everglades agriculture area where I spent so much time. Of course, sugarcane reigns supreme. It's roughly 80% of the crops that are grown there. Florida is the nation's leader in sugar production through sugarcane. The winter vegetable market is gigantic and feeds the East Coast when everybody else is under snow and ice. Huge assortment of leafy greens, sweet corn, green beans, celery, radish, cilantro, parsley, and others. Florida leads, or sweet corn, Florida leads, I should say the EAA produces more sweet corn than anybody else in Florida. And rice is a summer crop, it's a flooded summer crop, and we produce more rice than anybody else in Florida. So the EAA is very significant, over $2 billion of economic activity annually. Very famous, right? 1971, the Kissimmee River is straightened out to increase efficiency of water movement. It efficiently drains the floodplain, and that allows for low-density cattle grazing and then the future development of dairies north of the lake. In 1972, the Florida Water Resources Act creates the 5 water management districts, including the South Florida Water Management District where the EAA resides. And now, with the creation of these water management districts, agriculture within the EAA falls under the development strategies of the South Florida Water Management District, including their policies as they arise. I think this is the last historical bullet I want to mention, because if I did all the history, we'd be here till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The Everglades Forever Act. A lot of different things in the Everglades Forever Act, but for the purposes of our discussion today, it mandates the South Florida Water Management District to create the Everglades Regulatory Program, and this is in response to a couple things. First, observations that the ecosystem decline in the Everglades has been occurring for quite some time. It's linked to water quantity that's not being delivered. It's linked to disrupted timing of delivery, because you don't have that natural hydro period of lake overflowing and natural flows of water. You have water that's on or off depending on who turns the pump on and off. And it's also linked to water quality factors. The agriculture basin is identified as the single largest phosphorus source to the Everglades National Park. And you have to understand why this is important. The Everglades ecosystem evolved under a very low nutrient input system. It's called an oligotrophic system. It evolved where the highest inputs of nutrients came from rainfall, and that was before the industrial age that put lots of nutrients up into the atmosphere. So it was discovered that if you put phosphorus in this system, it creates larger ecosystem changes than any other required plant nutrient. So phosphorus became a source or a target for control. So what happened from the Everglades Forever Act and this regulatory program? By January '95, farming operations in the EAA are required to implement science-based best management practices that are strategically designed to reduce farm drainage phosphorus loads, and that's the work that I was involved in from 1993 to about 2000. A lot of things, farmers had to change the way they did business. Now they have to calibrate their pumps, they have to install instrumentation. And by the way, they have to bear the cost of all this. Install instrumentation that automatically collects water samples every time they do a drainage event, because those water samples are then analyzed for phosphorus content to see what kind of levels of phosphorus they're draining from their farm. They have to do a lot of monitoring of rainfall, drainage flows, phosphorus concentrations, and all this data is submitted to the district. And the district then calculates the entire phosphorus load trend for the year that is coming from all the collective farms. So this is not cherry picking each single farm to see what's happening, although the district has that information. But it's just looking at the entire basin and what kind of water is going to flow south to the glades. By law, the basin has to reduce their phosphorus loads by 25% relative to the historic baseline. Got a couple more minutes? Is that all right? A couple more, okay. Okay. I'll just finish up then. I have some photos, but we don't have to do the photos. Over the past 20 years, the average reduction has been 55%. Okay, this is more than double the mandated 25% reduction target, and that's about 3,000 metric tons of phosphorus that haven't gone to the Everglades. I want to make one last statement about stormwater treatment areas. This basin level water throughout the glades, before it goes into the water conservation areas, it's routed through stormwater treatment areas. These are freshwater marshes that just by the activity of plants growing and absorbing plant nutrients, they can remove phosphorus from the water and reduce phosphorus even further. So if you see that red circle that I put there, just watch the red circles come up, and that's where the stormwater treatment areas are located along the southern perimeter. The target was 10 parts per billion phosphorus concentration in the WCAs. I can tell you back in the mid-90s that just seemed impossible. Here'll be the last slide. If we look before BMPs, before stormwater treatment areas, green dots are sampled areas where phosphorus is less than 10 parts per billion. That's good. Red dots is bad because it's greater than the target. You see a lot of red, okay? And if we look at a map that's current, you'll see a complete reversal. And really in the last 20 years, average phosphorus concentrations in the WCAs has declined from 24 to 9. And the target's been reached with the activities of best management practices and the stormwater treatment areas in the glades. So I can stop there because that basically captures what I wanted to say. I was just going to show you some photos of best management practices, but we'll just do that another time. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. This is great. Could you stick around for a little while till after the presentation to maybe answer some questions? And this is so important, all of this about the nutrients in the water, because that's what costs the taxpayers money too when they have to try to clean the water, and now it's becoming cleaner in the past. This is wonderful. We have right now, this is an interesting precision agriculture. You're going to learn what this is and how they use it with the best management practices in the EAA. And our speaker is Cody Beard, and he is manager of precision agriculture for Florida Crystals Corporation. And thank you very much to Florida Crystals for the rice and the sugar samples that we have today. And please help me welcome Cody Beard.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Traffic is awesome, right? So the young woman spoke earlier about her drive this morning, and I made the mistake also of staying the night with my wife and family last night, and we live in Martin County. Yes, and we live in Martin County, so my drive was approximately 2 hours, but we're here, and it's a lovely day. And we're going to learn a lot about new technology and really what farming has become. The future is now. It's already happening here. So again, my name is Cody Beard, and one of the many things I do for Florida Crystals Corporation is I manage the Precision Ag program. A little bit about me first. I graduated here from Florida Atlantic. I was born and raised in Louisiana, where there is a long lineage and history of sugarcane and agriculture in general. I'm a local guy right here in South Florida. I've lived many places, and I'm sure a lot of y'all will agree with me. There is no place quite like Florida to live. Beautiful weather year-round, wonderful people, lots to do, lots to see. I have an engineering background. That's my education and my profession before getting into agriculture, and I never really imagined myself ending up a farmer. But on my first trip out to the Glades community, and my first time meeting some of the folks out there, mainly my boss and those that were interviewing me, I knew I had to be there. I knew that was where I needed to work. It's such a magnificent place, it really is. So a little bit about that area. It's an amazing, amazing ag community. We have the wonderful towns of Belle Glade, South Bay, Pahokee, Clewiston, all these areas that were built on the back of agriculture, but now agriculture depends greatly on these towns. The folks there provide all the services, a lot of the labor, and it's really, really great farming families. More than 70 families out there that grow these local products, the food, the stuff you see there on the table. The sugar and the rice is grown right in our backyard, right here, local products. Ron Rice touched on it earlier. That organic soil, that muck soil. You know, it's not the organic like you might see labeled on some of the products you buy at the store. When we say organic, that means there's a lot of organic matter in the soil. Okay, very, very, very unique, very special place to farm. That dark black soil, nutrient rich, requires very little to grow a lot. So, we again, being in Florida, we have great weather year round, subtropical climate. People might say the rainy season is predictable, but we all know it can rain at any point in time here in Florida. So, but plenty of water. It's managed correctly, and one of the downsides is that we live very, very close to a lot of developments. So a lot of residential areas. We have to be extremely careful when we farm to not affect our neighbors, but it also provides a great benefit for us to provide that farm-to-table product like you see right in front of you. It comes right from the fields. Really, there is no middleman. It's right from us to the store to you. So it's a blessing to have that here. And you know, Ron touched on earlier also that sugarcane is king out there, but also, you know, we really are the salad bowl of the South. Tons of lettuce, cabbage, radishes, green beans, corn. Every vegetable you could possibly name is pretty much grown right down here. Again, this is some of the land that we farm on at Florida Crystals out in the Glades. You can see our fields outlined in red with some of the areas. You'll notice, I wish I had a pointer for you, but you'll notice some of the towns there. Belle Glade, Pahokee again, great farming communities, good people. You'll see all of the infrastructure that we have there. We have two very large mills that we operate with. It's Okalanta and Osceola. We will grow predominantly sugarcane as our main crop. That sugarcane is both the regular conventional sugarcane, and also we have a organic line of sugarcane, and we are the only ones that grow that organic cane here, so a great crop. We also have corn, many vegetables, and we never leave a field completely empty. If we do have a rotation that does not include a crop on the field, we will flood it to preserve the soil and to prevent any erosion or anything like that. We always have something in the field or a way to manage our soil and our resources. Very important. We also have a few different kinds of muck, or something that the way that we define it. So we'll have our deep muck, very deep soil. Great to farm, very easy to operate. We have our shallow mucks. Shallow mucks are a little different. You might only have a foot between the topsoil and the rock below. So when you have that limited soil between the topsoil and the rock, you have to operate a lot differently, okay? And then we'll have some of our sandier lands. And the sandier lands will be what I have in my backyard in Martin County, and what we see a lot out here when you move out east. Kind of like digging a hole at the beach. So it requires a lot more resources and a little bit extra management. Now the fun part, precision ag. Precision ag is a really neat catchword for our industry. But it could be simply defined as minimizing our inputs and maximizing our outputs. So what does that mean? So our outputs will be more yield. So getting more vegetables, getting more sugar cane out of our crops while lowering what we put into it. Okay, reducing how much fertilizer, chemicals, fuel, manpower, reducing all of that input. Okay, and this all is driven by the idea of sustainability. Okay, sustainability is simply to be able to grow as much as we can to feed a growing human population, okay, while minimizing our impact on the environment and everything around us, but still being able to produce and be an effective business, okay? So the best way to accomplish all of that is new technology. And this technology is fantastic. Like anything else, it is upgraded and changes almost instantly all the time, every 6 months. And I have a fantastic job that allows me to play with all these new toys as soon as they're released. So, a basic overview of precision agriculture. Okay, the first thing you have to do is you have to set up a network. So the network we use is a series of radio towers, okay, devices that we install on our tractors, anything that receives a satellite signal, okay. And then we have that. The next part is developing your data storage and management. Okay, very, very important. We get a lot of information that comes from tractors and that comes from our pumps that we have in our canal. Everything feeds a central system, and that's a lot. And all that comes down to the third part of the system is taking all of that information and giving it to the farmers, giving it to the people out there that can make decisions with it. The farmer has evolved. It's a long way, people kind of think of a farmer as wearing overalls, on a horse-drawn carriage and a pitchfork throwing seed over the side. I'm a farmer, and I don't do any of that stuff. So we've come a long way. We use a lot of neat technology to accomplish our goals. Telematics, so that would be the first part, right, is our network. And simply put, telematics is any kind of data or information that comes with a point, an XY coordinate. So it has to have a location point attached to it. Okay, so that could be anything. We at Florida Crystals set up a series of towers. These towers are called RTK towers. That's a short abbreviation for a very long word, and all that means is that we are able to collect a GPS signal. It's a free signal that we all get access to. We collect that signal, we correct it, and rebroadcast it out to all of our tractors and everything in the field, and it takes that GPS signal and makes it very, very precise, within 1 inch. Okay, 1 inch. And I'll explain to you why that's so important here in a few slides. The data that is delivered at that point that comes from that RTK network is extremely precise. Okay, and it could be brought to us on a USB stick like we have here in the computer. It could be transmitted with a cellular device or a cellular modem on the tractor. But it can come from the radio tower also, many different ways, okay? Let me point out that the map below is of where you see the circles, that's our coverage. Covers many, many, many acres, almost 300,000 acres. We cover with our RTK network. And the other picture is an example of a tower. Let's continue telematics with this last point, is that we also use photogrammetry, okay, and remote sensing. Remote sensing is simply taking satellite images, processing them through a computer, and then having it give us a series of maps and pictures that are color-coded that help us make decisions in the field. When you have an operation as large as ours, okay, it takes a lot of eyes. And it's impossible for a farmer or farm manager to visit all of their fields in a year almost, or even in 2 years. There's so many fields out there. So what we do is we will take the satellite image, process it, hand that to the farm manager, and help explain to him what might be happening. So if you have a weed problem, or if you have water fatigue, or any disease in the field, it's going to show on the image. We may even take that satellite image, and if there's a bigger problem, something we can't identify from the satellite, we can deploy a team of scientists to go out with drones and get a really close look at it. So fantastic, fantastic technology we have. Just some pictures for examples of the ways that we collect data on the farm. The picture I'm looking at the screen, is the top right. Top right is that's an onboard display. And we'll have that in our tractors, our sugarcane harvesters, anything that rolls in the field will have this display on it. And what that does is collect data and sends it back to a central database, okay? And that's giving me data on the equipment, RPMs, fuel usage, how many hours that machine actually worked. It can send me maintenance reports if the machine needs to be worked on, repaired, oil change, anything. It sends an alert to us and lets us know. The iPad you see there in the middle is just like a giant cell phone, and it is able to do field collection. So instead of the old days when we used to write down on a pen and pad what we see in the field, they're able to mark it on that iPad and submit it electronically to us. And it just gets the info back faster. You see a gentleman there poking a probe into the ground. That's my loyal employee, Nicholas, and he is taking a soil sample. It's a way to sample is that you take the soil sample, attach a XY coordinate point to it, and now we know exactly what that soil nutrient value is in that precise place. Our pumps, our water pumps, Ron was speaking earlier, we move water all throughout the farm, and we have devices on the pumps that will send us information, okay? Again, is the pump on? How much water is it moving? How much fuel is it using? At the end of the day, all of this is aimed at making us the most efficient farm that we could possibly be. So the second part of our system is the data management and that knowledge transfer, okay? We have a farm filled with many managers that have experience in agriculture, 30, 40 years. What we are trying to accomplish with the data is we're not going to revolutionize the way they operate per se. All we're trying to do is make it a touch better, a touch more efficient. So we're combining that tribal knowledge, that 40 years of experience with data and just solidifying all of it and making it a lot more efficient. So once that data is collected, we're going to compile it into a database, tons and tons of data, lots of data. Sometimes it takes up to 2 weeks to process just one set, okay? We'll get that back to the farmers and they're able to make decisions, okay? And we can send them reports, maps, spreadsheets, anything they need. You'll see on the bottom we have touch screens in our offices. Giant 55-inch touchscreens, kind of like a big screen TV, and they can access anything they want from there. They all have computers, iPads, iPhones in the field, just a much better way to communicate. This is what some of the map data looks like. So these are data layers. Data layers are really the most basic form of information when you're talking agriculture, okay? So working top to bottom, say we harvest a field, and that harvesting machine has a yield monitor on it. That yield monitor is a scale that's inside the machine, and that scale will tell us exactly how much that sugarcane weighs as it's coming out of the machine. What that does is, it allows us to paint a picture within a 40-acre field to show the variation in sugarcane production. Very important. Now that we have a picture to see where our problem areas are. So if you see spots in yellow, orange, and red, that tells us we need to look at that area because we lost the chance to produce more. And they do this with corn, they do this with green beans, okay? A lot of your grains have been doing this for many years, okay? The next step is now, why did we lose production? So we could look at a number of other maps. The next map down, the second from the top, is a planting map. Maybe the field wasn't planted all that well. Maybe your rows aren't perfectly straight. The next one down, fertilization. How was the fertilizer applied? I'm able to see the map. Maybe there's some areas where they drop too much or too little. The bottom one would be elevation. Maybe the field's not that level. Maybe there's poor drainage and all of the water goes from the high point, which is in red, to the low point, which is in dark green. Maybe there's too much water there. Many different things that we can do to investigate crop loss. Some other views that we have, that we've recently developed, we have a huge shop network. We have over 4,000 pieces of equipment. So how do we possibly keep an eye on and service all of that equipment and make sure that our mechanics and our shop personnel are doing a good job maintaining it? One of the ways is create a way for everyone to view the information live on any device. So you can see the picture on top. The picture on top is one of our shop views. Okay? On the bottom is a map collector. So when I showed you the iPad in that one slide, this is what we get back. We'll get back data points on a map, and if you click on those points, it tells us exactly what was submitted. Just a much more efficient way of getting information across a 165,000 acre farm. The final thing is decisions. All of this has to lead to something. We have to take action on the data. Simply put, and this data allows us to, instead of managing the farm as a whole, 10, 20, 50,000 acres, we're able to manage block by block, 40 acres by 40 acres, okay? We're getting site specific. We do exactly what we need to do in that field. So our equipment is able to give us reports to tell us how efficient it's running. So we're able to maximize that efficiency. We can put different settings in the equipment to save fuel, reduce RPMs, that kind of thing. Also, that equipment can send me an alarm. Hey, I'm about to break. Stop me now, change something, and we'll move on. It's much better to be predictive in your maintenance than reactive. Also, if we're going to track repair response times, we know areas that we can improve in terms of how many days does it take to fix something. Our yield data, okay, like I said, shows areas where we lost production and we can improve. Also, the guidance lines, if your rows are perfectly straight, that keeps all of your equipment off of your crop, and it preserves that crop. Some other ways that we can use this technology to help us be more efficient is, number one, targeted fertilizer. Extremely important. We use a series of devices on the fertilizer trucks that controls exactly how much fertilizer we're putting on a field. We can use the maps to write a prescription for the field. Basically saying we only put the amount of fertilizer that field needs. No more, no less. Okay? Saving any waste, being much more efficient with our nutrient use. We do the same thing with our spray rigs. Anytime we treat a field for a disease or pest or anything like that, we are only spraying exactly what needs to be put on the field. It's all controlled with the onboard display on that machine. We can use different types of remote sensing that can identify crop health. So if we need to move water from one place to another, we're not just moving water blindly, we know how much we need to send. Some things that we're really looking forward to in the future. They're doing a lot of this already in the Midwest and also in a lot of greenhouses and controlled environments. We really hope to bring this to the outdoors, to bigger environments, and really capitalizing on some of this technology. So the picture you see on the bottom is called a green seeker. And green seekers are used in greenhouses all over the world, and what it is it uses a very high-tech camera to identify the difference in color between a weed and the crop. So when a sprayer comes over the top, it takes a picture, identifies the weed, and only sprays the weed. And this has been around for almost a decade. Again, in greenhouses, we really hope to bring that to the next level and employ that in the field. You can imagine the amount of chemical that would save. And it's things like that. We also are researching weather stations. It's funny, in Florida, it could rain at your neighbor's house. You don't get a drop on your own yard. Now, if we had a series of weather stations set up every 3 miles or so in the glades, that would really go a long way to help us with water control and irrigation. So it's things like this that really make the job exciting. And that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Boy, we got so much information this morning. And this is all on video. It's all on video. You go back to, thank you so much. You go back to our website, the Alliance website, and you can tell everybody to just watch it and you'll get this whole presentation again. It was quite a lot of information and we took quite a long time this morning, but the EAA is gigantic. And there's so much, it's great to see that with all that land, we're trying to really cut down on all of the uses of all that fertilizer, because remember that EPA nutrient criteria issue that we had a few years ago, it's still here today, and all of that could be actually in the end costing us more money with our clearing our water and all, and keeping our water clean. So this is good that they're making these attempts at doing this. We have some questions, but there's only a couple of questions here, and our two speakers have offered to stay. So if you have the questions, because we don't want to hold everybody up, we have other things here that we need to do, and you could go right over and speak directly one-on-one to either one of our speakers who are staying. Thanks so much for coming today. Next month we'll see you, and it will be all about important information about property appraiser and ways to save money for your association and for yourself.